Hi, I'm Inanna, and I am channeling 17 days of no self, going into deep meditation to give you the answers on self mastery from my highest self. Yesterday, I spent a great deal of time on a decode diagram that I was inspired to do regarding or centering around the seven churches of Revelation based on a dream that I had about a certain group, which I will not go into, that's mentioned within the book. You can reasonably deduce exactly who I'm talking about so I don't get any account strikes because I am very much shadow banned on this app. So I had this dream about this particular group that's associated with the seven churches of Revelations 1 and 2, and I wanted to look more into that because it was a pretty wild dream. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is a key that I need to tackle this particular point in scripture, which I've never done. I've never looked at it. So I began dismantling each and every one of those passages, their meanings and what they could possibly be related to, and came up with this diagram yesterday. It took an extensive amount of research as well as patience to put this diagram together. It literally took all day to create the map. What it is a formulation of is the etymology of the word church and what it actually means. If you look at the etymology of the word church, it actually means Circe, which is a derivative of circle or kirk. This was interesting to me because that immediately made me think about the zodiac wheel, which is something I was already thinking about in regards to these churches or any type of religious scripture. I believe that there's so much symbology, and I'm not the first person to say that there's tons of astrology and symbology around astrology within the Bible. So I went ahead and used that premise to unpack these seven churches or these seven circles. And what I was led to was to correlate that with the seven Olympian spirits, which is the governing spirits over the 7 days, or the Olympian spirits that govern the heavens and create the zodiacs and the planets, etc. And once I did that, everything kind of fell into place. I'm going to need you to really put your thinking cap on because I'm not going to dive that deeply into this to keep from getting strikes. I think for the most part, the diagram is pretty self-explanatory. If you look at what I did, I went through all of the names of the different churches and came up with 3 different codex. The first codex is about DNA mapping, which I did like an anagram deep dive, which is what took me all day to descramble and decode what these names could actually mean. And it was pretty cohesive when it came together with those first 4 that I decoded. And then there was other parts of the names that tied into what I already teach on this channel, surrounding the 2 witnesses, surrounding the birth of the man-child, surrounding the reset, surrounding this event or this meeting that's supposed to happen, which I have plenty of diagrams explaining that. I also took the 7 Olympians map within the 7 days because they each have their own sigils, and I decoded them to create this map. Instead of me laying out this map as 4 like straight cross quadrants, I decided to do it in the manner of the magical directions, which is a more accurate representation of the 7 Olympian spirits. I feel like it kind of correlates perfectly in terms of where the east, west, north, south, and how that is governed in a magical sense, or the way that it's supposed to be mystically laid out according to the 7 Olympian spirits, and how the zodiacs and everything correlate to the days and which one is the east, which one is the west, etc. So I followed that, and then I decoded the sigils by laying them out in their proper quadrants according to what direction they represent, and created somewhat of a map. And I also found these secret little hidden tidbits that kind of allude to the fact that this is actually a map that leads from the first day to the last day of the week, which is the 7th day. If you look closely at the sigil for Sunday, or the Michael sigil, you basically have an arrow that's like starred here, and there's an area where it looks like there's this little lever that you pull out and it undocks what looks like a ship. And that same shape that you undock is actually represented in the 7th day, resting or nestled on top of this item that looks like, well, you're just parking it basically. So I treated that like a ship that was traveling through the entire diagram. So I did a deep dive in decoding to map this out and to map the sigils in a way that made sense according to their directions, according to their magical directions, and which way they're supposed to go and what quadrants they're supposed to be in. So the map is actually extremely accurate. Not only that, it actually flows like a true soul map. I then went on to break down the characteristics of the zodiacs within each gate according to the magical directions and the way that they should be ordered. And I put navigational tools because, in my opinion, I believe that this particular map is speaking more to the zodiac wheel. You know how you get your astrological chart and there's these little light beams that kind of show you basically what light carves out your personality. I am of the belief that astrology should not be the rulership. And again, when we have this reset, there will be no more moon machine to kind of carve out or govern the heads, as it's mentioned in the Lost Book of Inky, that this machine was placed in the heavens for, which kind of influences personalities and the days and the seasons and the years. It is an oversight to our energies. However, we are one with the solar energy or the photon-like energy of the sun. So at the end of all of this, we will no longer be governed by the zodiac. So the map of the zodiac and the pitfalls of each sign, or the things not to fall prey to, or the weaknesses of each zodiac, are parts of us keeping leveled and not allowing the zodiac to rule over us. Ultimately, we are photon light beings and we are headed back to the light from which we came. There will be no zodiac. So it's more so about you mastering all of it and understanding that it doesn't govern you. So this is why I broke everything down according to the gates and according to those different traits that you should and should not embody, mapped out as zones within the diagram. So it kind of serves as a soul map, basically, of the things that you should do in order for you to govern your own or self-master your light body according to the zodiac, as well as a secret codex that determines what the mission crux is all about and when it starts. There is so much information I could have included in this diagram that I just had to leave out and just use my better judgment to push certain things out of it. But if you're determined to study on your own and dive a little bit deeper into these things, there's a ton more information that you can glean from what I have already put on this diagram. And this is a piggyback because the other day we just did a diagram about the soul ship, or the light body being your ship, and I gave the operations manual of how to keep your vibrations high on that. And now we have the actual map, or the navigational map, in terms of our mission, Bliss Gate, and how you're going to master traveling the galaxy of the zodiac or the astrological chart to map towards our events, okay, and when we're going to get to this point. Everything on this map is easy to read if you go through it. I am very clear and intentional about what it is that I said. It's up on my page, even though it's being heavily shadow banned for whatever reason. And I just want to say, it's a lot of work that I put into doing these diagrams. Sometimes they take all day. Researching, decoding, and putting these things together is not an on-the-fly type of thing. It literally takes time. It takes me researching. It takes me asking questions, looking into different things, sometimes descrambling, sometimes doing mathematics, sometimes looking into science. And these things take so much time. It just kind of grinds my gears when they block my content. But you know what? I'm not going to let that get to me. We're just going to keep on pushing. If you've been following along, we have gotten the complete map, basically, of our entire self-mastery course from beginning to end. And I'm not entirely sure what's next. So you're just going to have to wait until tomorrow. And on that note, I just want to leave on this particular note about the censorship and about what it is that I do on this channel. There are religious bodies of governance that basically run the show, and they get to say that they talk to interdimensional beings that no one can see but everyone believes, and it's not considered psychosis or not a behavioral health issue, and they get to determine or interpret scripture according to the way that they want to. They get up in the church and they speak on it. They interpret, they say, this is what God told me it is, and this is what I was inspired to be. And they interpret prophecy based on the book of Revelation. Hello, I was raised in a Seventh-day Adventist church that broke these scriptures down and applied them on a world level to say these were things that were going to happen within government. But the minute that you start applying the type of logic and pattern recognition that I have and the abilities that I have, now it becomes a problem. This is a huge issue for me, and I do not like the censorship. I don't believe in censorship in this regard, as long as you're not harming anyone. And we allegedly live in a country that's supposed to have religious freedom, but every time I turn around, they're stifling things that don't coincide with the status quo of the established religions. And the minute that you start applying logic and you start to think in different ways or look at it from different perspectives, now it's a behavioral health issue. Now it's a community guidelines issue, right? I'm just very much over these platforms and how they police this type of content, and it's more about stifling the individual to keep you from telling these particular things. I sometimes take it as a badge of honor also, because I feel as though the mess of information that is readily available, if you can see it, that means it's not really worth two hoots, okay? But the things that get blocked, or the people who are shadow banned, are the ones that you should be listening to more consistently. If you have to block the content, there must be some truth to it. I hope you enjoyed this message. Please like, share, and subscribe, and put a comment down in the comments just to let me know what you think of this content overall. Keep shining bright. Peace, love, and light.